about what had happened, and the interview was so brief that there isn't a whole lot of extra material there. I did already upload that to the Internet Archive. So if somebody wants to read the police report, I already put it online. You can check it out yourself. But yeah, it's kind of weird that I thought this was like, wow, this really grabbed me. And then it just kind of drops off, which is why this, like I said, this ends abruptly. But I didn't want to not cover it because at the same time, it's still 2 former nuns in a suicide pact, which I don't know if people know this, like if you're not terribly religious, but it's generally really frowned upon to commit suicide. Like that's, especially if you're Catholic, like that's automatically like go to hell. Like no, don't pass go, don't collect 200, go straight to hell. So the 2 nuns who would clearly know the Catholic rules
is kind of
are like, we're going to commit suicide to be with God. They should know those are not the rules.
But for whatever reason, that's not uncommon.
It's not.
People do that all the time. So
yeah, it don't get me wrong. Like, suicide is more common than I think people realize it is, and I don't think that whatever your religious background is has a strong impact on whether you choose to do it or not.
But when you're choosing to do it specifically because you want to be with God,
yeah, it's the phrasing that catches me because it's not like they're in despair. They're like, oh, life isn't worth it anymore. Like they're like, no, we want to be in peace and be with God. Like that's not you wouldn't in your right state of mind, I think, phrase it like that, because unless they've just completely abandoned their backgrounds, that's not how they should be thinking about it. I mean, I'm in no place to judge them, but I'm just saying, like,
I don't know.
That's extra weird to me coming from the religious perspective.
I also hear this story and I think, wouldn't it be really cool to just like, okay, so it's 2 nuns that stop being a nun.
Yeah.
They drive around the country.
Yeah.
And they just take random jobs and do stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a whole lot of really good stories that could come from that. You know?
I do. I agree.
Like to have this be a full comprehensive story, if we could have that, would be really cool.
Yeah. So, now, am I allowed to say the part that I'm not supposed to say?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So
because we can always delete it if it's that offensive.
It's not offensive. It's not offensive at all.
Okay.
I have absolutely nothing to back up what I'm about to say, which is out of character for me. I don't normally do this.
Okay.
But I'm going to do it. When I read this story, I could not help but wonder, is this a relationship?
Oh, I feel like it is.
That's how I read it.
Yeah.
And they never say it.
No, they never say it. And when did this happen?
72.
Do you think they would say it even if they knew it was?
Not necessarily, no. But that's the thing. But that's like how I read it. Like I didn't read this as we're 2 former nuns who are good friends and we drive around the country. I read this as we're 2 nuns who realize that we like women and we're going to leave and drive around the country. And I have nothing to back that up. Absolutely nothing at all to back that up. But that's how I read it. And I, on top of the fact that these 2 were together and they're considered each other's family and all that, on top of that, the going to psychotherapy part, like I'm reading that again. I have nothing to back this up, but I'm like, are they in psychotherapy because they're gay?
Because they're trying to like fix them or whatever.
Yeah,
quote unquote.
Because
I want to be clear, I don't believe that, but that's what they would say.
Right. Because I'm thinking in 1972, that would be a reason. Like, I mean, there's tons of other reasons, of course, but that would be a reason that you would go, is that either you yourself or somebody else thinks you need some help. Mm-hmm. And I really wonder if that, and I would love it, like, that's never going to be known. Like, I'm not going to get that doctor's records. Not going to happen. But I would love to know that. Because I'm almost curious, like, if there really is almost nothing psychologically wrong with these women, they're just living in this society where
who they
they're
are.
told that they're wrong.
Yeah, who they are is not acceptable.
Yeah.
Basically. And I think that very well could be a very strong possibility. You still have to question, though.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever somebody goes as far as like a ritual suicide
Yeah.
thing, I mean, there's some sort of frustration, but it could just be the persecution that people are putting them through because of who they are.
I gotta say, I don't normally speculate. I don't like speculating. I've made that very clear on the podcast. And then, of course, I went ahead and did it anyway. And now, I'll get a nasty email being like, "What? That was my aunt. She wasn't a lesbian." Like, okay, fine. Like, I didn't mean it. Like, if you take that as an insult, I didn't mean it as an insult. I'm just like, that's the way I read this.
Yeah,
like,
that's the way I read it. But we should be very clear that it could just be really too really close.
It could be. I mean, that certainly happens too.
I know that at one point in time you said like the next of kin for each of them was each other.
Yeah.
And that just screams like
that's
more than
there's just
like
so
friends.
Many there's so many little hints.
Yeah.
Like leaving your job security to go off together, writing each other as next of kin, saying that the one woman's family accepts her more than her own family. I'm like, why does your own family not accept you? Maybe none of that is maybe I'm reading the whole thing wrong, but that's how I read it. And I'm like, that to me would make the story even more interesting. But we don't know.
We don't know, but I think you absolutely are correct because now we go from having two nuns working in a hospital, quitting their job to travel the world or country.
Yeah.
Now you have two nuns that fall in love, leave their job, and travel the world, a country, because they don't fit anywhere because people aren't accepting of who they are, which I think is just an amazing story. I think
it's a great story, and it's in the time frame here in the 1970s. That's a tragic story. But in our time now, 50 years later, this is like, I don't want to say it's romantic because, there's suicide involved, but it's like, people who found each other and like defied the odds. Like, that's cool. Like, you two were ahead of your time there. The world just didn't agree. But I could, again, maybe I'm wrong and none of this is correct. So anyway, like I said, like that's the part that I wasn't sure if I should say because I don't have the evidence to back it up, but I just can't help but read it that way.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I mean, by all means, it's possible that that's not it at all. But I think that's a pretty strong possibility.
Yeah.
The other big question that goes with this is that is the hotel that this happened at, is this the hotel? And I'm not even sure if it's still there.
It's not there today, but it was there in our lifetime.
Okay, so they did tear it down, but it used to be the little motel somewhere very close to, probably like right around like, what is it, Willie's or whatever?
Sure.
The little supper club there and stuff. I think it might have been right across the street from it.
I mean,
I don't think it's
anybody like not from Kekona is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you're referring to a motel that was on
Double O,
then yeah, it's probably that.
Probably very close to 55.
It's 55. It's probably that one. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't be 100% because it in here it doesn't give me an address. It just gives me like a route number.
Okay.
So I can't be 100%, but it's on Highland. It's on Double O. I mean, how many Kekona motels are there? I don't know.
Well, that used to be 41 though. So maybe there was a lot of hotels at one point in time there.
I don't know. But I think you're probably right.
So, all right. Well, that was a short, sweet episode, but I think, and you know what I want you to know that I think you made the episode way better by throwing a little bit of speculation in there.
I know.
So
that's the part that I think really makes it interesting.
I do too.
Which is why I don't normally want to do it, but this time I made an exception because I would love to, I say this a lot of times where I'm like, I'd love to have some more on this, and then I never do because I have to keep moving forward. But this is one where I really hope there's something out there that can add to it because I think there's a deeper story here.
Oh,
I'm not sure